Hi guys, welcome back to Red Flag Radio F1 YouTube channel. We are here to talk about what all happened in Belgian Grand Prix where Oscar Piastri wins the race and extended his championship lead to 16 points over Lando Norris, who finished P2, and Charles Leclerc rounding up our podium after defending for his life over Max Verstappen for the majority of the race. Well, how good that race was? Probably I'll ask you first, like how amazing it was according to you.
Man, as a fan of McLaren, it was great. Yet another 1-2. I wanted Norris to win just for the sake of entertainment, but I have claimed that I'm supporting Piastri for the championship this year around at least. So, all those things considered, I had a great time, and even though it was a boring race, it was still a great result for me.
They were amazing. Another 1-2. I think that was the sixth 1-2 of the season, and they are the dominant force of 2025. And Constructors' Championship is sealed and done. Maybe they should focus on 2026 now, and I think they would be focusing on 2026 now. They should not bring any upgrades to this car. It's done. Let Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris fight because the car looks amazing. Oscar Piastri was amazing. He got that overtake done when it was needed. He found that spot. Maybe Lando Norris had some power issues. We are not sure about that, but it was clinical. That overtake was brave, but full commitment there, and that's where I think champions are made.
Exactly.
So,
Even if we discount Lando's with an asterisk power issues, the overtake that Oscar performed was pretty much one of his best chances to perform the overtake given how the rest of the race was going for everyone else. So at the very beginning, having a giant pair of metallic testicles and climbing Eau Rouge right behind Lando's car's asshole and then passing him up the straight is clinical. It was surgery. It was nothing short of surgery performed on Lando. Because he did go off the racing line onto the wetter part of the track, which you could argue would favor the driver considering they were still going on inters at that time. But then no one was stopping Lando from going on that part of the track and gaining that tire advantage. Maybe he would have still been overtaken, but then his tires probably would have been cooler and held on for a little bit longer, where he could have had a chance at overtaking Oscar back down some other part of the track. So, I mean, we can go into the maybes forever, but yeah, amazing move from Oscar. But yeah, I think after Silverstone, he looked and it felt from his racing that he was just annoyed.
yeah, he wanted that
Yeah,
desperately, man.
and he wanted to prove that everyone else is his at least this year.
Yeah, man. Even I said it out loud that probably there's some pressure on Piastri because he was not winning. Like one win in 6 races is something I was not expecting to happen, but finally, man, he was able to come up so strong in this race and he was amazing. And on the other side, Lando Norris, I think it was a story of what could have been because he had the pace. Even on hards, he was doing really well, but he made like three mistakes and he was not getting that. When he was gaining too much time, he was just making that mistake, which is not acceptable at this point, man.
Yeah, he saved the car at least. He did not DNF when he went off track. He just let the car go in deep. But then that was exactly the lap, as you said. He was catching Oscar hard. If that
Yeah.
mistake does not happen, he gets a couple of laps to make a move, or at least have the beginnings of a move. At least it would have created that nervousness in Oscar. But yeah, man, everyone on the internet likes to take a dig at Lando, and usually I'm not a big proponent of that because, I mean, it's very easy to sit here and judge. If anyone else is put in Lando's shoes, probably wouldn't finish a single lap. But it does look after every other race that Lando is his own worst enemy.
Yeah, man. It could have been, as I said, what could, because what could have been it was that case because he started from pole. He could have done better, and he was doing well from past, I think, 4-5 races, but this was that race where we can say he could have done better. But nevertheless, another 1-2 for McLaren, and I think their car is pretty much sorted for any type of circuit.
Yeah, and let's move on to therefore the podium number 3 boy, Leclerc, who was historically, and not even historically, I was recent history, and in our videos as well, we said he's in the wet conditions. So what did FIA do? They gave him dry conditions and he scored a podium.
Yeah, man. 3 straight third place finishes at Spa for him now. Maybe he should apply for Belgium nationality here at this point.
Yeah, and
But
even
this,
his first win, right?
yeah,
Belgium.
man. Yeah, it's amazing what he does here. And it was, I think, one of the most hard earned P3 because Max Verstappen was breathing down his neck, man. I mean, if you ask Max Verstappen, he can probably design the whole rear wing of Ferrari just by sitting behind Charles Leclerc for the majority of race. And it was amazing, man. Defensively, he was great, no mistakes. He was, I guess, spot on. Maybe it was that dry race setup and something that favored him in a way. But I think that those were the conditions that probably favored him and probably what he needed to get that podium.
And indeed, both Ferraris were clearly set up for the dry conditions because Lewis's charged through the field. And to be completely fair, that was the only entertaining part of the race. Another double points finish for Ferrari, by the way. And there is only one race where we didn't have a double Ferrari points finish, which was Silverstone. But other than that, they have been scoring, both drivers have been scoring some sort of points every single race. So the consistency is admirable. Even though his start at Ferrari was his worst start in several years, it's glad to see him do this well and show that he's still there, man. He's not going down gently into this. And
Yeah.
that is a great thing, but even be that as it may, the Ferrari in isolation as a team still looks sort of iffy around the edges. This weekend around as well was a strategic gamble, so to speak. It's just that it's one of those weekends when when the gamble worked. I mean, you know that famous theory that if you give a monkey a typewriter and infinite time, accidentally the monkey will type the entire written works of Shakespeare. This was one of those moments. If you gamble long enough, eventually you're gonna get it right.
Yeah, man. They needed that. And in all honesty, if we talk about the whole weekend for Lewis Hamilton, it was tragic, man. 2 Q1 exits. He was not finding that sweet spot, but he was confident, and it was just another day on a Sunday where he was able to pass through every single driver who was on his way, except for Albon because he couldn't overtake him, and Albon did an amazing job. But overall, I think Lewis Hamilton did really well, especially during that time when track was, I think, slightly wet for his conditions because he started from pit lane. He went on that maybe high downforce setup, and probably that favored him to some extent until the dry weather came up and there was just dry running and he couldn't overtake much. So probably that was good. He was able to at least stay with Albon and secure that spot, which is something Ferrari would be pleased to have with those points. And maybe that suspension upgrade is working. Maybe it was that final piece in the jigsaw puzzle that will probably give some results in future. But it's too soon to say because we saw Leclerc was struggling in sprint as well. Maybe it was the setup or something like that. Probably we have to wait for Hungary to get more insights on how that car is.
Precisely. So,
Yeah.
therefore, I think let's move on to the guy who spent his entire race admiring that Ferrari's ass, which is Max Verstappen. Props to him for finishing P4 in that shitbox, but the word shitbox is pretty much a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point because even now, this is pretty much the best case that Red Bull can put up. I mean, Max did win the sprint. All credit to him for that, and that is a great minor poke at McLaren. But that's all you can do. It's like trying to throw a paper ball at a great bear. It's fine, you're gonna get its attention, but then that achieves all. It's still a giant. So
Yeah, man. I think they went for the higher downforce as well because post qualifying we saw that they were able to bridge some gap in sector 2 with McLaren, and they were not as fast in sector 1 and 3, which they went on during the sprint. And that was the reason why he won the sprint because he was able to make that lap 1 overtake on Piastri, and he was able to secure that sprint win because he knew he can defend for those laps. But in this race, even I think both drivers went on that full wet race setup, and again they had no pace because the conditions were like that. So Max just looked powerless, and on the other side, Yuki Tsunoda, Another heartbreak for him, man, because he was in Q3 after, I don't know, ages, and he had to pit after maybe like 2-3 laps when the track was just bone dry, and he just lost it, man. And there were no points for him because he was comfortably in the points during the early laps and there was that pace. But P13 again, and again a missed opportunity for him, not because of his driving, but because of that timing. So I don't know, man. Probably a mixed weekend for Lauren Mekis as well as a whole, because yes, they got that sprint win, but the gamble didn't pay off this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was hovering around P7 at the beginning stages of the Grand Prix, and that just goes to show that he is starting to learn how the car behaves, and that is a tall order to accomplish for any driver. So it is a little bit tragic, as you rightly pointed out, but not as tragic as Kimi Antonelli's race. And let's therefore move on to Mercedes, because Mercedes looks like a very black and white picture, at this point. And I'm not going to fault Antonelli a lot for that, because 3 races out of the past 6, I think, or 7, his car, it didn't even finish the race. The engine is blowing up, he's crashing into people, stuff like that. Fine, you can fault him for that, but then even then, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place in Austria. He was going to crash into someone, and he was going to DNF. So he was the final nail in the coffin in that particular racing incident. But yeah, it's a little bit tragic for him. I think he was P15 or P16 ultimately. Meaningless racing finish, not even close to the points. So there is a little bit of a sad phase going on for him right now, and man, I hope the summer break recharges him and changes that, because the Mercedes boys are safe. I mean, Toto has turned out to be a two-faced bitch, because now he's saying there is no way I'm going to replace my driver. So all that means is that Max and Toto did meet a bunch of times, but they could not agree upon a deal, because even Max said that he's happy where he is, which is bullshit. So the Mercedes boys are safe in their seats. Russell had a great performance, but yeah, in my opinion, I think the summer break should be used by Antonelli to focus on how he can do better qualifying finishes, honestly, because he can hold his own in the race.
Yeah, I think that's just 1 point finish in last 7 races, and that was the podium in Canada. So it's not working well for Kimi Antonelli. Maybe it was just another race where even he went for that wet weather setup. Again, that's the case, I think, for every driver which maybe who didn't get that many points. We can say that they just went on a wet weather setup and they took that gamble, and it didn't pay off because he was stuck behind Ocon. They tried a 2-stop strategy that went nowhere, and there was nothing to show. And if we talk about George Russell, yes, he finished P5. They got 10 points, but he was like nowhere close. I think initially he was when he passed Albon early, and he was fighting with Verstappen as well. And from that point on, I think it was just a lonely race for him. No threat behind, no fight ahead, and it was just laps, and they were just trying to finish those 44 laps for Russell. He was just minding his own business, like we usually see that with the Mercedes car this season. So I think that's the best they could have achieved this weekend. And even Toto was frustrated that they don't know where the pace went for this weekend. So they need a good weekend in Budapest as well, because we are seeing that Ferrari is getting those points every single race weekend with both drivers. You need those 2 drivers to fight for that points. And if your car is not reliable, then when those races are finished and you are there, you have to get those points, man. And that's not happening for Antonelli, at least. For Russell, yes, he's doing that part, but they need more from both drivers.
And moving on to Williams then, it was a very mixed bag for Carlos Sainz, because in the sprint he looked like he was going to do well, but he didn't, and then in the race as well he was actually not good at all. But so that mixed bag was very confusing to me. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I could not figure out where the head was and where the tail was with Carlos Sainz, because yeah, just a very confusing weekend for him. So Again, Albon coming in clutch, big time for Williams, scoring decent points just when they needed it. P6 is a very good finish for Williams, at least in the side of Albon. And given how the rest of the weekend went as an average for Williams, P6 was pretty much the best case scenario, I feel, because they just felt like they were all over the place, honestly.
I think this might quietly go down as one of Albon's best race in a Williams. And to be honest, I did predict a P3 for Albon. Not because of his racing, or maybe that too, but I thought that if we get that wet weather racing, probably Albon can get that podium, which we didn't get. So that was just my bad. I underestimated or maybe overestimated FIA for that, but in all honesty, he didn't put a foot wrong, especially when Lewis Hamilton was breathing down his neck for half of the race, man. So P6, top of the midfield, and like you said, this was that weekend where they desperately needed those points, and they did bring some upgrades as well. So I think they are going in right direction. They still want to get that P5, which will be crucial for sure. Financially, it definitely helps. So getting that P5 is bare minimum for Williams and showing that they are at least best of the rest. So amazing stuff for Williams. Carlos Sainz, yeah, it was a race to forget, man. Pit lane start, maybe he was also on high downforce setup and two-stop strategy, nothing worked. He even apologized to the team, man, that it was his call that he wanted to go on this wet weather setup. And I don't know, man, it was just something not right, because I think that was the right gamble for Sainz considering where he was starting in the race, but it could have been a perfect weekend for Williams as well. But
Yeah, I think that
overall,
Yeah, that apology from Sainz was, I think, an apology of good faith, because it was decidedly not his bag. It was entirely, and I mean, we did rant about FIA a lot, so it was entirely their bad on that matter, because that, as very right point, that was the sensible gamble to take, to go on the wet weather setup. And if FIA just shafts you up the asshole, then there is not a lot you can do about it.
yeah, man, yeah. I don't know, man. But overall, I think Williams are going in that right direction. And even James Walls agreed that this package is working, which is good for them.
Absolutely. And let's then move on to Sauber, because fifth consecutive points finish for Sauber. This time around it was Bortoleto, P10 I believe, and that is an amazing performance from Bortoleto, given that he's a rookie who is, let's be honest here, amongst all the rookies, he supposedly at the beginning of the season had the worst car. And the fact that Sauber has very gently and gradually turned up the heat in terms of upgrades, both the drivers are just showing it, man. This is a beautiful performance. Double points finish in Austria as well, by the way, from Sauber. So, amazing stuff. Very happy for Bortoleto.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I think Bortoleto continues to build one of those, impressive rookie campaigns, because obviously the tools he got, I think that was the maximum that was possible, especially with the start, considering Sauber was nowhere, and we saw his one lap pace was extremely fast, man. He was doing really well during those qualifying sessions, and he was just even better than Hülkenberg in many cases. I think he's over Hülkenberg in qualifying head-to-head now. So he's doing that part. And another points finish, it was a smooth drive, and I think that was the best they could have achieved during those conditions. So amazing stuff for him. And Hülkenberg, I think he was there as well. It could have been a double points for Sauber, in all honesty.
Exactly.
Because they just went on. Yeah, they decided to pit. Maybe his tires were gone, but they had to go on a two-stop strategy, and that strategy didn't work. It didn't work for any driver. So they had to give up on that top 10 finish, and yeah, I think P12 was the maximum for Hülkenberg in that case, because there's not much they can do. But overall, I think we can say that Sauber has completely transformed themselves, man, and maybe they can be a threat to Williams if Williams don't put their pieces at the right places. So
yeah, if Williams gets complacent And if Sauber continues to be on push mode, then quite right, their P5 may well be dethroned by Sauber. And as you said, at the beginning stages of the race, I believe briefly Sauber was 9th and 10th. They could have had a double points, the double points, with Bortoletto being 9th, mind you. So it almost feels bad that it didn't work out, but yeah, I mean, what can you do when your tires are just falling off a cliff? So P12 is still not a bad finish, It's very close to the points, and it does instill confidence in you that you could have gotten points.
Absolutely, man. And to be honest, what is working for Sauber is obviously the upgrades as well, but the synergy between that team, because both drivers are comfortable, both drivers are happy, and there's that, like a brotherhood as well. We can see from both drivers where both drivers are complementing each other. And when Bortoletto asked that he's faster than Hülkenberg, they just went on, okay, allowed him to overtake, which was a good team call as well, because I think Bortoletto was faster than Hülkenberg. So I think synergy is there, and that is what you need. And if they are planning to transform this team into Audi, I feel they should go with the same drivers, because this is working for them. And if Audi car is better, then I think Bortoletto will do better in his second season as well. And obviously we know how good Hülkenberg is. So they should stick with this lineup as of now.
5th consecutive points finish for Sauber as a team. That's the bottom line here that I would really want to highlight, because it is f***ing Sauber, man. In the first 5 races, the videos we were making, we were bored to death when we were talking about Sauber. But now suddenly they've become the most interesting team to talk about.
Yeah, man. It's always fun to talk about this team now.
Yeah.
From where we were few weeks ago. But yeah, I think we should move on to Racing Bulls, because it was a weekend where at least Lawson delivered. And even Hajar was there at least at the start, because both drivers were in Q3. And it was that one weekend where everything was going well. Maybe after Christian Horner left, I think that synergy was there between both Red Bull teams, because Alan Pearman was there. This is his debut as well, not to forget. And he was there to support Lawson and Hajar as well. And Lawson did get those points. He was P9, and from the moment the lights went out, he looked sharp. He made no mistakes and managed that wet start as well. And that clean switch to slicks obviously helped him. But that was not the case for Hajar, because he had to wait one more lap. And after that, he was just out of those top 10 spots, because they couldn't double stack at that moment, because both drivers were close. So it was just that weekend where Hajar couldn't do much. He also had some technical issues, no straight line speed, and he couldn't defend, couldn't attack. So I think he was the only driver who was one lap down. So I don't think it was just because Hajar was not driving well, but it was just that the tools he got was not that great for this weekend. But overall, I think they would be happy with at least 2 points from Lawson's side, because if one driver is not performing, then at least other driver is stepping up in those cases.
Exactly, and it looks exceedingly like Alan Permain's promotion from sporting director to team principal, and as a consequence of Meki's promotion to team boss at Red Bull. It just seems like one of those things where cooler heads prevail. So at least up till Q3, the Bulls collectively, all 4 Bulls looked very good. And it just goes to show that this is the kind of calmness and this is the kind of level-headedness they needed to develop that kind of synergy, so that they can, as an organization at least, the Bulls can eat up 4 places out of the top 10, which would be the ideal scenario, of course. But yeah, this is the kind of leadership you would need for that. I mean, I'm not trying to discredit Horner here, despite him not being one of my favorite people in life. He is responsible for 8 championships, as I repeatedly keep saying. But it looks like right now, given all the chaos at Red Bull, they just need people to be cool, calm and collected and try to get them as many top 10 places as possible. And
yeah, man,
it almost looked like it was gonna work out that way this weekend itself.
Okay, so moving on to Alpine, Pierre Gasly, man, again P10, man. It was just pure survival mode at this point, and he barely pulled it off, because 1 point to show for Alpine. Again, it's like they're just slowly, gradually grabbing those points. But it was just amazing stuff for Gasly because that car had no pace and he held off a train of cars for almost like 20 laps, and there was just no mistake, no drama. And this is something that we always say about Gasly when he needs to defend, he's amazing with those moments. And this is the track where he usually performs well. So for a team with the worst car on the grid, I think that was one huge point for Gasly.
Yeah, dude, the thing is, now we can say decidedly that for half the season, Gasly has been a one-man army at Alpine. Precisely half the season is over, and every single molecule and modicum of point at Alpine is scored by him. So,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, I believe he can make Alpine his bitch right now as an organization, because whatever has happened that can be noteworthy has come from him. And I'm sure on the other side of that coin, he's also desperately begging for a teammate who can help him out as well. Because then at least, even if there is still no double points finish necessarily, the teammate can help him, give him a tow during quali, something like that, get him to Q3 by giving him a tow in Q2, anything. The possibilities are there. But right now it feels like Gasly is almost battling his own team and his own car as well. The team and the car are not delivering, and he is. He's fighting against laws of physics to get points at this point.
Absolutely, man. And it's just getting overshadowed by what all is happening for Alpine, because it could have been a season where we thought that Alpine will definitely do better from where they were last season, but they are just going backwards, and that's the scenario where I think that's the worst card now. From Sauber, who has done tremendously well this season, I think Alpine has the worst car right now, and that's the reason why other drivers are not performing. Like even Jack Doohan was there this race weekend where he came to see the team. Probably, maybe he would say that maybe I also deserve some more races now, because it was just another race with no points for Franco Colapinto. And I mean, he looked okay early on, but when the slicks came out, the pace disappeared, and there's not much I can say. The only thing I can think of is probably that it was a clean weekend from what we saw during those previous race weekends, but it's getting very tough for him to show that why he deserves that seat for long term at this moment. But he will get, I think, one more shot in Hungary at least before the break.
I don't know, man. I feel like since the past couple of years, it is a well-known fact that Alpine is a little bit overweight and a little bit underpowered. And I might be wrong about the performance figures here, but I think, as far as I remember, up till last year, Alpine was down around 12 horsepower on the maximum peak performance, and it was overweight by a few kilograms as well, 3 or 4 kilograms as well. And put together, those things really tank your performance, man. And that's why I don't understand where are the Alpine upgrades being invested right now. If nothing else, first and foremost, get the car to the spec where it has the highest performance chance. You can work on the handling later, but right now, even if you create a car that handles like an absolute dream, and it handles like it's handling at the speed of your thoughts, the car still does not have enough juice, and it's way too overweight to push it to the limit. First, let it approach the limit, and that's my big complaint with Alpine right now. But if you're supposed to be the contender for the best of the rest, come on. Where are your upgrades being put, man? What are you upgrading? Are you even doing that? I don't know.
Yeah, man. I think the only upgrade they will get next year is probably that Mercedes engine, which will definitely help them. But it's tough to say how they want to move forward and what are the next steps that they are planning to take. So, with the upgrades, I don't think there are any upgrades, but they should focus on 2026, get the maximum hours of that wind tunnel time for that car, and probably do better, because they are not moving forward by any means. Or maybe they are moving forward, but other teams are moving faster, if we want to say that.
Fair enough. Well put. And therefore, this is a great time to talk about a team that is also not moving forward, which is Haas. The pendulum story continues for Haas. Couple of weekends you get point finishes, couple of weekends you don't get any point finishes. I mean, what can we say? I mean, they did, again, during the qualifying part, they did look like they had something to say, especially Ocon, at least for the main race. But I don't know, it's like it fell off massively. Maybe they are also victim of this now revered problem of the high drag versus low drag setup, or the rain setup versus not the rain setup. But yeah, it's a little bit tragic for Haas, honestly.
Man, that car had no rear wing, especially during the sprint part. Like, they just went on with the full low drag setup, and I don't know, man, it was looking so weird. But he was the fastest man in sector 1 and probably sector 3 as well. But they were losing like a second in sector 2. So that was something that was working for them in those conditions when it was not raining. But Ollie Behrman, I think he must be cursed, man, because I think that was his fourth straight P11 finish. It's impressive in its own cruel way, because what if, man? It's like he's now the nearly man who just wants some points, man. Like, you can see Gasly who gets that 1 point race after race, and then you have Ollie Behrman who's just there saying, please give me that 1 point, man. I deserve that. And that's a weird record to have, like 4 straight P11 finishes.
Yeah, it's a bit like, you can compare this to gynecologists and pizza delivery men. They can smell it, but they can't eat it. And that's the same case for Ollie Behrman. He's smelling those points, but he just can't gobble that last point, man.
It's weird, man. It's crazy, man. And it could have been a better weekend for the, at least for the main race, but it was a rough one for Ocon as well. I think it was another case of wrong pit stop timing, and there was no chance to recover, because I think once he pitted, he was on a used tires as well. So he was just fighting for his life at that moment. But I think there was some speed, and probably they couldn't execute it on a Sunday.
Speaking of having pace and not doing anything, or even not having pace in this case, how was Aston Martin this weekend? How did the upgrades work out, man?
Best as always. The magic was there. It's just that we couldn't see that. I mean, P19 and P20, man, best of the rest. If you remove that 0, they were P1, P2. I don't know, man. Yeah, man, the upgrades didn't deliver. Like how we can talk about the radio call that always Alonso says that these upgrades are working much slower, something like that. And that was the case with this one as well. Like, they brought the biggest set of upgrades that were possible, and they were the slowest among all. And that was their worst qualifying too. I think I haven't seen them that far, and I don't think they can go even further back, because maybe next year, because there will be 22 cars. But yeah, man, Lance Stroll did made up some spots because he had the setup for dry, but Fernando Alonso had no pace to show because he was on a wet setup. He was also one of those drivers who started from pit lane, and yeah, man, the car looked draggy, and without chaos, they had no way to move forward, and that was the case. And probably maybe one of that reasons why I was not happy with the direction that FIA took, because Lance Stroll couldn't overtake much because it was not raining, and Fernando Alonso's wet weather setup was not even used in that case, and Aston Martin couldn't deliver, and the whole weekend was tragic, to say the least. Even the sprint, even the qualifying, even the race as well, and that's not what they need, considering even Haas can overtake them in constructors now, and they will be, I think, P9.
Other than taking a giant dump and making 20 analogies about how poor their upgrades and performance was, I don't have a lot to contribute to Aston Martin's section of our video.
Yeah.
There is a reason they're the
Yeah.
final team we're talking about, but yeah.
Absolutely, man. I think someone pointed out that this software, when it comes to getting those upgrades, are not giving them the right direction, which is why whatever they bring, so those upgrades never work. I don't know how long they want to take this forward, because even Adrian Newey can't bring that magic. Then it will be a tough case, because in all honesty, Aston Martin was doing well from last 3-4 race weekends, especially Alonso, who was getting those points. But this was that weekend to forget, and probably they should just focus in Hungary now, because maybe that could be that weekend where they can do better. I don't
Yeah.
know. They looked fast on the straight line speed, but Hungary is not that track. So whether that performance will be there, I'm not sure.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, at least majority of Newey's efforts are going to be dedicated towards 2026. So, this is not, for our audience, this is not the metric by which you should measure Newey. I mean, if you know anything about Newey, you know that he's the most talented designer in F1 so far. Probably after Colin Chapman from the earlier part of the Formula One seasons where we both were still sperms. But yeah, I think in the modern era, Adrian Newey is the best designer Formula One has seen. So don't measure this Aston Martin performance as a reflection of his work. You can do that next year, and if next year the car is believe me, I'll be the first one to take a dump on all three of them.
I can't even imagine the scenes if that happens. I don't. Let's just say we didn't get the classic we hoped for, but I think there are storylines that we should focus on, like Piastri is becoming the guy and probably moving closer and closer to that championship. But can Lando Norris bounce back from that mistakes which he did in this race weekend? Can Ferrari do better, because there are upgrades that are probably taking them in right direction? And what can Red Bull do from here, considering Laurent Mekies is now here and Mercedes is just stuck in a nowhere's land? So there are so many questions but no answers at the moment. And next up is Budapest, which is tight, twisty, technical, you name it. And it's the final shot before the summer break arrives. So what will happen? I don't know. But if you really enjoyed this review, make sure to drop that like, share with your friends, talk about it, man. Make some jokes about us and talk about what shit talk they are doing. But let us know in the comments if you enjoyed this race, what are your views, and how do you think we should move forward, especially with the wet races, and who was the driver of the day according to you. But if you really enjoyed this, share your support, subscribe if you haven't already, and FIA needs to stop baby proofing the sport. FIA needs to stop baby proofing this sport, man. It's high time, man. But when the drama hits, we are waving the red flag, and I hope FIA learn from this. Goodbye.